let's get started. So today, I think we were going to discuss or do a little Q&A. It's really nice to be here and have another chat with you, Dr. Areli. So my name is Shukul Kachwala, and I'm the co-founder of High Carb Health. So we're a health and nutrition consultancy, and I started this along with my brother Shamiz. So it's a bit of a story. I might as well kind of talk through the story for people who are not quite aware of it quickly. So my brother Shamiz was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis in 2012 when he was working in Japan, and he had gone through a real experience in hospital where he continued to get worse under the medical care. And at the point of where they were thinking of cutting out his colon, he found out about Dr. David Klein, who's written the book Self-Healing Colitis and Crohn's. And if you haven't seen that book or read that book, it's highly recommended that you check it out. So right. Dr. David Klein promotes a predominantly raw vegan diet, and upon changing his diet to a whole food plant-based diet and focusing mainly on fruits and very simple starches, he was able to heal his colon. And instead of having his colon removed, which is what the doctors recommended, he's still got his colon intact now, and he's thriving. And it's been more than 9 years since he's been medication free now. So ulcerative colitis is a form of inflammatory bowel disease where you need to be on medication for the rest of your life, but he isn't. And now he's training for a marathon at the end of October. So he's going to be running a marathon at the end of October. So he's been doing really well.
Since 2012, he has been able to control his disease with plant-based diet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, symptom and medication free since about early 2013, but he's been medication free since August 2012.
Wow.
So yeah, it's been incredible. And so after what happened to him, we realized that we really wanted to help people. We didn't want people to be suffering like he did, and kind of show people that there is a different alternative. There is a way to live without medication, and it's mainly about being on a plant-based diet. So that's why we started up High Carb Health, and we've helped hundreds of people all over the world overcome ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, diverticulitis, gastritis. You kind of name the digestive situation, and we've helped people heal from it and come off medication. So obviously, ideally in coordination or in collaboration with their doctor as well.
Perfect. Yeah. That's amazing.
That's kind of what we do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So we posted these stories and posts on Instagram trying to help out people who have questions about inflammatory bowel disease and raw vegan diets. I know that your brother and probably yourself follow a high raw diet. Is that correct?
Extremely. Yeah, I've got my blended watermelon here for my breakfast. So we eat fruit, mostly fruit until dinner, based on what was recommended by David Klein, and also we do raw days quite often as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great. So how do you want to start, with my questions or?
Yeah, let's start with your questions, and okay. Depending on how we go, I had a couple of questions which were quite interesting ones as well, so we can kind of finish off with that, I guess.
Yeah, sure. And I also have questions for you, your brother following Dr. Klein's protocol. That will be very interesting.
Oh, yeah, we can talk about that for sure.
Okay. And obviously there's some people asking questions, so we will address those as well. Let's see. Amber SDG says she's a vegan, incorporating more raw foods, but she's, how come eating raw makes me feel raw, exposed, not comfortable? I guess she's not feeling comfortable with eating more raw. Will it change one day as I become more high raw? Will I feel more comforted, or this is just me? So you want to answer?
Well, it really depends where the discomfort is. If it's a digestive discomfort, it could be part of a cleansing that's going on in the body. Because what I've found through my own experience working with a lot of people is that eating raw or fruits is never the problem.
Right.
Fruits generally reveals problems that exist within your body. Now, if you've got bowel issues or inflammation in the bowel, there may be certain foods that you don't want to eat, like really rough fibrous foods like leafy greens raw at the beginning until you allow your body to heal and get a bit stronger, and maybe just stick with the soft fruits that are high in soluble fibers to start off with, and start with easy to digest things like bananas and papayas, dates. Those kind of raw foods are really I guess the easiest to start with, and then you can kind of expand on your diet as you get more comfortable with your digestion. But generally, any change in diet may, especially if you're increasing the fiber content of your diet, you can possibly have a little bit of discomfort to start off with.
Yeah, I totally agree. Most of the times we come to plant-based diet from a very poor fiber diet. Standard American diet has lots of processed food, wheat, flour, things that are very soft, and we just it's just like a muscle. You can't start lifting heavy weights or running a marathon if you haven't exercised the muscles of your digestion that can support the distension that fiber has and high volume food has, which is raw vegan, high in volume, high in fiber. So I agree with you totally. At the beginning, start with low fiber fruits and vegetables, and then eventually start incorporating more and more, and just know yourself and your tolerance. Because I remember in my days when transitioning into high raw, I sometimes had diarrhea. It wasn't diarrhea like infectious. It was more like faster transit bowel times because of the fiber. I wasn't used to it. My body, my small intestines, large bowel was not enough, was not strong enough to contain the fiber, the necessary time to favor absorption. So it just went quick to the toilet. But yeah, now that I know what I know now, I would probably have started with less fibrous fruits and vegetables. Still lots of fruits and vegetables, but less fibers. You mentioned papaya, bananas, tropical fruit that are soft. Like if I put, I always think like if I put a drop of liquefied banana in my eye, it will probably feel, like what? But it's not going to burn my eye. Whereas if I eat pineapple, right, or if I put a drop of pineapple in my eye, that's so irritant for those who are not familiarized with this lifestyle. So I would start with those things that will not cause me irritation in my mucosas.
Yeah, absolutely. And your tongue is your gateway to that. So
the tongue.
with the fruit, if you put on your tongue and it burns your tongue, then it may also irritate your intestinal tract. And you can use that for all sorts of different things, spices, condiments. The best one is chili. People say, "Oh, can I eat spicy food?" And I got inflamed bowel. Well, put it on your tongue and see what happens. It's going to kind of irritate the bowel in a similar way. So yeah, I think that was a good question in terms of digestive discomfort. Maybe we'll move on to the next one.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Same person, Amber, says, maybe this question is too specific, but I'll try. So they're still weaning a teenage family member of 1.5 years of antibiotics for Lyme disease and PANDAS, which is like kind of like a encephalitis or like a neurological psychiatric affection related to streptococcus. I think that's the mnemonic for that. I'll Google it when you give the answer, but I will continue. So 1.5 years of antibiotics for Lyme and PANDAS, and she has been healing following Dr. Katie Raid's low glutamate diet, no dairy and gluten, and the family went vegan. The plan has worked for them, but they feel worried about the damage that the antibiotics have done to the gut of this family. And he says that when one person goes off the good eating plan and eats vegan junk food, anxiety ticks, depression kicks, and it goes back. So why is so fast? Why is this so fast? Apparently, I don't understand the question. Any specific raw foods to build back our gut microbiome? Should we go faster with healing foods or slower? Sometimes I feel like it's detox symptoms. Did you understand the question?
I can try. I mean, I can't give any personal
Yeah,
advice here without knowing more about the medical history or the dietary history of the person. But
right.
one of the things we're here to talk about is the podcast that we did, which is going to be live on our channel called IBD Heal. And the podcast that I went and published before yours, Areli, is a microbiome masterclass with a very good friend of mine, Robin Tudor. And
Right.
so I think it might be worthwhile for this person to go and listen to the microbiome masterclass, which is an hour and then 10 minutes just talking about the microbiome and how to maximize your bacterial population. But the main thing to understand is that to get your microbiome back in order, because what happens is after antibiotics, even though you can rebuild your bacterial populations reasonably quickly, the constitution of it is different. So certain bacteria are more resistant to antibiotics than others. And so when you rebuild, those bacteria that are more resistant build back stronger compared to the others who weren't as kind of strong from that perspective. So you kind of even though you get your bacterial population back, it's kind of altered in a way, not to the way it was before you took the antibiotics. So obviously, it's just a matter of time now and then patience of feeding fibers into your bowel so that all the populations can balance. If you do stool tests, maybe you may find certain bacteria that you may want to refeed with using specific prebiotics, but I don't recommend using prebiotics without really understanding why you're doing it. Okay, especially for IBD, the advice is not to use prebiotics at all because the evidence is extremely low. There's literally no evidence around the benefit for probiotics. I'm talking about, not prebiotics, probiotics and IBD. So if you've got inflammation in the bowel, using probiotics is not necessarily the best idea.
Right.
So why would someone get anxiety and depression? I mean, there is a link between dysbiosis and the vagus nerve connects between the gut and the brain. And so obviously if you're not going to feed the right type of bacterial population, then it could affect your mental attitude or your mental approach as well. So it can be as quick as just one meal. It really can.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Like, I think I'm going to answer the question backwards. Why it happens so fast? And maybe it's just detox. I mean, the body is detoxing itself every single second. Like, as your blood circulates through your liver, is detoxifying. We don't realize how many pollutants we are ingesting or breathing even, or, sometimes people still use deodorant or body lotions that are full of phthalates and all these, sulfates and very harsh chemicals. So I guess the answer to that question is yes, it can happen as fast as with one single meal, as you mentioned, especially if you have this history of susceptibility. Not many people develop pandas after ingesting lots of antibiotics. I'm sure like 1 year and a half, probably it really burdens your microbiome. But I guess once somebody develops something like that, you need to give it time. I mean, it didn't happen overnight, so the restoration and recovery is going to take a while as well. And I just Google because I wasn't sure about the acronym. PANDAS is pediatric autoimmune neuropsychiatric disorder associated with streptococcus. So there's so many names and so many diseases being found nowadays. At the end of the day, it's just a matter of lack of harmony, lack of a loss of homeostasis in our bodies. And, homeostasis is achieved once we find balance between, the microbiome, when we don't abuse the body, when we can deal with daily poisons and we don't overburden ourselves. So that will be my answer. And what else? What was the answer? Sorry, the question.
I'd just like to finish off that question by saying that a really important thing that you mentioned is that, these things didn't happen overnight and they don't heal overnight. So the body takes time to heal, and health is like, I constitute it to similar to fitness. You can't just suddenly go for a run one day and think you're going to be fit. It needs to be consistent and disciplined over a period of time. And you have to train and train and train. And with health, you need to train and train and train your body. And you kind of think, okay, I'm going to abuse it today and then go back to it tomorrow. Especially when you're not well, compliance is
Right.
of optimal importance.
Exactly.
Yeah, especially when you're unwell.
Yeah.
You know, actually, there was, just when you talk about compliance, there's a very interesting, I guess, article one of my friends wrote, and he kind of put this example into understanding compliance. You know, where they say, oh, you know, so and so, my grandfather smoked all the way into his 90s, and he survived, and he lived. Okay, I said, well, it's kind of like talking about the person that jumped out of the airplane without the parachute and survived. You know, you got the overwhelming evidence that tells us that most people who do that aren't going to be healthy in the long term. Just because there's a few anecdotal evidences of people doing okay, and maybe they were just lucky, it doesn't mean that it's going to be you. And then especially if you're sick, that definitely isn't you because you're already in this position.
Exactly.
You know, so yeah,
Yeah.
compliance is very important.
Oh yeah, for sure. I know my body, and whenever I deviate a little bit from my raw veganism, that was in the past when I was transitioning. I knew that the gains that I got, like 5 days of eating clean, could be screwed by the weekend that I cheated on. Not cheated, but like I was high raw transitioning. So that it's a lesson that all of us learn eventually. Obviously, as you know, there are certain cooked foods that do not trigger any inflammation. So I'm sure that's why you allow them in your diet. But some people have different susceptibilities, and I just want to emphasize about the glutamate-free diet. I think that helps definitely. She mentions one author, Dr. Katie Rates, and glutamate is in everything. And as long as we avoid processed food, we are avoiding glutamate. I mean, it's in everything. I was reading, just put in your browser, glutamate free diet, and you will find a list of all the additives that is in processed food, vegan foods, even soy sauce, is full of glutamates. So yeah, something to consider. And the best thing is, like, if you can cut it from the tree, or get it from a plant, and you eat it raw, or you process it a little bit if you're transitioning, fine. I think that's the best approach.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to the next one.
Sure. You want in your chat, or let's finish mine?
Let's finish yours.
Okay. Yeah. So Ama Mood One says 2 questions. Number 1, is there anything that you've noticed in David Klein's book that doesn't have to be followed for colitis recovery? I guess that's for you.
Anything that I've noticed in David Klein's book? Well, that's probably a very difficult question to answer. I guess when you look at the way David Klein structures his book, because he comes from I guess, how's the best way to say this? The way he explains it is really good. Okay. Right. And if you really want to heal, then sticking as much compliance as you can to his protocol is the best. Now, it is written in his book as well, but I think what most people end up doing is they jump straight to the healing diet from wherever they started. Okay, right. So if you're coming from a meat and dairy diet, or you're coming from a pretty unhealthy environment where there's been a lot of toxins being exposed to the body, going straight to the healing diet can cause a rapid detox. And for a lot of people, that can be too fast. So what we recommend is people transition towards that healing diet that David Klein recommends. Don't just go from where you are now straight to that healing diet overnight, because it can be too rapid, it can be too fast. So that would be the only thing I would really say is, if you're following David Klein's protocol, don't just go from where you are to the healing diet overnight. Okay, take your time, ease your way into it. So the way we do is we start with a transition diet that we've developed. Then the problem is these diseases are so individualized, and everybody has different processes. It's so difficult to outline a generalized protocol for someone to follow. Okay, and that's the other thing with David Klein's protocol, is that you have to really know what you're doing. These are serious conditions. IBD is it's not like a walk in the park. It's not we're playing a game. And if you're not sure what you're doing, you really need to get help from somebody who knows what they're talking about. Okay. Exactly. Because you don't want to make mistakes that are going to put you into hospital, because mistakes with IBD put you into hospital, basically. And so that's kind of what I would say is be careful about how quickly you go onto the healing diet, and make sure you really understand the full approach before you take it on. And if you're not sure, talk to someone who does know. That would be my biggest advice. The other thing is you may not necessarily have to strictly stick to the healing diet for long periods of time. So a lot of our clients may not need to go on his very strict healing protocol for long periods of time. But again, that's based on us understanding the symptoms, the specific situation, their blood tests, and everything like that. So it's very hard to say, oh, if you're looking for something that you, just because you don't want to do it in a particular way, I'm not really going to help you too much, because you really have to be strict if you want to heal from IBD, unfortunately.
Right.
Or fortunately,
And the same
whichever way you want to
person,
look at it.
right. And the same person asked the second question, what's your go-to cheat meal? Go-to cheat meal.
I don't like the word cheat meal.
Me neither.
I don't like the word cheat meal because it's kind of trying to say that you don't like what you're doing, or you're not enjoying your diet, or you want to do harm to your body. Like, why would anyone want to do harm to their body? So I guess we do some. I don't like to call it a cheat meal. I like to say maybe sometimes you can have a sanity check or something like that, where depending on your health situation, you could eat a healthy meal at a restaurant or something like that. But really, if you're not well, there's no such thing as a cheat meal. Really, there isn't. I mean, you need to get yourself better. But the way I look at it, my so-called sanity check or cheat meal would be somebody else's healthy option.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't like the whole idea of cheat meals. I don't think it's kind of, you're coming from a place of lack, like, oh, I wish I could eat that, instead of realizing how many amazing things you can eat. And from us going from the meat and dairy diet to the, initially I went raw for a few months at the start of my journey, and then kind of transitioned back into a little bit of cooked food. But in terms of what I have been able to eat, the different types of fruits that I've been able to enjoy, I would never have been exposed to that if I hadn't found out about this. And so I try and focus on what I can eat rather than what I can't. I think if you do that, you're going to be much more successful than always thinking about, oh my God, I wish I could eat something else.
Oh, definitely. That's a great mindset. And I mean, for me, not cheat meals necessary, but if I want to kind of compensate myself or reward myself, I would eat something that I normally eat occasionally and that I really like, because either it's very expensive or it's not available. And for me, that will
durian.
be durian or jackfruit. It's very expensive. But I will, indulge myself with that. Like, even, it's healthy, but
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's my daughter, she's 4 years old, and her favorite fruit is durian.
Wow.
It's so expensive to get. But so once a month we get durian as a treat, and she'll just eat until she can't eat anymore. It's just amazing, So yeah.
All right. Well, those were my questions. I remember
those are your questions?
posted in my story, but I forgot the question. I apologize. Hopefully the person is listening so she can type it. So what about your question?
Yeah, I've got a question from Sam, and Sam's asked, should we be careful about food combining with raw fruits and vegetables? Okay, should we be? I'll hand that over to you, actually, because you have a good experience of that with food combining and things like that.
Be careful about food combining with raw. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I was talking at the beginning about the importance of starting with low fiber fruits and vegetables. If it's your first approach to raw veganism, don't jump immediately like, oh, I'm going to do like just oranges and pineapple. No, I would say, there's so many food combining charts. I haven't even created my own, because the ones that exist are very good. But the rule of thumb is like sweet with sweet, semi-acid with semi-acid, or semi-acid can go with sweet as well, and the acid go with acid only, or semi-sweet, some of them. And separate category is the melons, watermelon, cantaloupe, honeydews, etc. Also fatty fruits like durian go alone. I think it's a very satisfying meal, but it's very rare that people get access to it. So sweet with sweet. I disagree with the people who call trophology kind of like a quackery. You know, trophology is the study of different food groups and how they combine for proper digestion. I think is vital if we follow a
Mm.
raw vegan diet. So I think we should be very careful. And if you kind of know by heart those charts, it's very easy to follow. I mean, just follow your instincts once you are into raw veganism. After some trial and error, obviously everybody makes mistakes at the beginning, but try to keep that in mind, the food combining. And then the greens go well with basically anything, but you should keep them separate from your fruit unless you do smoothies, because
Mm.
otherwise they cause fermentation. So end your day with a salad and fats.
Mm.
That's kind of like the
Leafy
principle.
greens,
And leafy
leafy
greens.
greens will be fine. Leafy greens are fine with fruit.
Yeah, leafy greens with
Yeah.
some sweet or semi-acid food is fine. But if you're
Yeah.
mixing, you know, like I don't know, I don't like to mix lettuce with strange combinations like pineapple. I just don't feel like, you know,
Yeah, but
or
in terms of
microgreens.
in terms of the actual theory behind it, though, it shouldn't cause any digestive problem because there's no sugar in the lettuce and there's no starch in the lettuce. So, celery, lettuce, kale, spinach, all of those things, because they don't have any real sugar or starch in them, they shouldn't interrupt the digestion of any fruits.
Okay.
But if you've got a mildly starchy vegetable like a broccoli or a carrot or cauliflower, anything that's got a little bit of starch in it, you don't want to go anywhere near fruit with that.
Right.
Okay. And I think that's something that people need to be aware of. In terms of little trick that most people aren't aware of. Okay, this is what David Klein told me. So this is coming straight from the source. He told me about food combining. When you make a smoothie, the food combination rules around fruit don't apply. Okay, most people don't know this because when you say you can mix orange with banana if you put it into a smoothie. Not that I'd really want to try that, but from an actual physiological perspective, it doesn't matter because as soon as you blend it together, you've created a new fruit, and it just will digest. Okay, so like that's why you can put strawberry and banana, even though strawberry is an acid fruit and banana is a sweet fruit. You can combine those in a smoothie, but if you eat them separately, you need to be a bit more careful because then they don't combine as easily when you don't blend them together. So they're little tip around food combining with smoothies. But yeah, I think you're right. I think you absolutely have to be careful, especially when you've got a digestive discomfort with food combining and making sure you get the right transit times. You don't let semi-digestive food mix with new different foods or fats mixing with sugars, all of those things. I think you mentioned that really well in our podcast, actually explaining how you wait for a lot of time before you introduce if you have fat at night, you wait for a longer time before you introduce an extra meal the next day. So I think for people who want to know more about that, Dr. Areli explained that really well in our podcast. That's going live very shortly. The next question, did you have anything else to add to that?
No, that's fine.
Okay, cool. And the next question is from Gupta Sarogi. Can we eat raw when we have Crohn's? Is the question. Of course you can. Yeah, not a problem, but you just have to be careful about what you eat. You can't be. I think we mentioned this in our previous question as well about if you've got digestive discomfort, eat the soft fruits, the easier to digest foods. But the other thing that I would say is if you're changing your diet now, don't go 100% raw tomorrow. Again, you'll detoxify very quickly. You can lose weight very fast. You can start to increase symptoms very quickly because the body's going to get a lot of energy for healing. And so it's like, when you're in your car, you don't want to put the pedal to the floor, the accelerator pedal to the floor from the beginning. You want to slowly ease your way and learn how your body handles different things. So if you're coming from a cooked food diet, especially one that's high in meat and dairy and eggs and fish, you don't want to go straight to raw food if you've got Crohn's or colitis, because that's going to just make you go, make things detox very, very quickly. So yeah, just ease your way into it, but definitely eating raw for Crohn's and colitis is the best thing you can do if you can manage it mentally. You've got to be aware of the mental aspect of healing from these digestive issues as well. But if you can do it and you enjoy it, then that's going to be the best healing experience you're going to get if you can transition into that process easily. Do you have anything else to add to that?
I would say that when you are like in a flare or something, probably you should Just focus on the more starchy fruits like bananas and papayas, maybe, right? It's softer if you are into
Definitely.
there. Yeah.
Bananas are the best. The bananas really help bind the stool back together. So you got a lot of diarrhea. Stay away from a lot of the watery fruits like melons and
Yeah.
juices and things like that, and try and like make thicker smoothies or eating bananas and things like that to kind of help bind the stool together and slow down the detox process. Definitely.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Well,
Okay,
we
so
don't have more questions in our post. Let's jump to the live
chat.
question. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Amamud one might have been asked already, but can we watch this again? Yes. It's gonna be in my live and in my YouTube channel.
Yeah.
I guess he asked a question during our chat. He says, "But doesn't that put more stress on the body internally?" I don't know what he's referring to. If you can repeat
Oh,
the
sorry.
question, maybe we can help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Angela says, what do you recommend to lower triglycerides? I'm already following a raw vegan diet, no oils, no nuts, no milk products. Oh, this is a great question. Do you have
Mm.
an answer, or can I just jump?
I think you can answer this one.
Yeah. So this is a question that I've been asked by many long-term raw vegans, like kind of like
Mm.
direct message, private message. They're kind of
Mm.
concerned because they're like, "Hey, Dr. Areli, I'm doing everything right. Like, you know me. Like, I've been doing this for a long time, and I just did a blood test, and I have cholesterol fine, but my triglycerides are high. And one of the things that I think is a cause is when people blend sugar, like fruit, and they drink it as a soda, as a pop,
Too
because
fast.
too fast is a big
Mm.
load of fructose and glucose to your liver, and
Mm.
eventually, triglycerides is a molecule of fat and glycerol. Glycerol is from carbohydrates. So you better eat the fruit alone or whole. If you're gonna
Mm.
juice it or in smoothies or something, try to not to make it super sweet. Like, I don't want to say any names, but there are certain people that are very active, very, very active, and they can tolerate a burden of 20 bananas in a smoothie,
Mm.
and they can drink it like water, and they are
Yeah.
fine because they're very active. But most of
Mm.
us are sedentary, and people fall in this mistake of blending all fruits together and just drink
Mm.
it like water. I would recommend
Yes.
to eat fruit as a whole, or do it in a smoothie. And when you're drinking your smoothie, swallow it. Not don't swallow it immediately, but kind of play with it in
No.
your mouth.
You still got to
So
chew it. Still try and
yeah,
chew it. Yeah.
try to chew,
Um.
make the
Mm.
effect of chewing in your smoothie, and
A
drink
couple
it
of things
as
I
you
tell
will
people.
normally drink, like
Mhm.
depending on the amount of fruit that you are
Yep.
using for your smoothie, how long it will take you if you will eat it as a whole, right? So
That's
that will
exactly what I was just about to say that. So you took the words out of my mouth. You have to think, okay, if I'm going to put 5 or 6 bananas into the smoothie, how long would it take me to eat 5 or 6 bananas? And you got to think, okay, I'm going to drink it at that speed. Like even this, I've blended some watermelon, but I'm not going to drink it like you know, like water. Just sip away at it slowly and have it that way. So yeah. But yes, I agree. The best way to do it is to eat your fruit whole. That's the best if you can. The times we recommend a lot of smoothies because when people have got colitis or Crohn's, they're very underweight and they actually need to increase their calories. And one of the best ways to do that is through smoothies. But for most people, it's actually the opposite. And a smoothie is actually going to give them more calories than what they need. So
right.
if I guess if you're having smoothies, check out the amount of calories that you're eating and don't go across a certain limit. But if you've got IBD issues, then you've got absorption problems already, and your bowel's inflamed. And having a smoothie can actually help with maximizing the amount of nutrients that get absorbed, and it can also help increasing the amount of calories that you're consuming because normally people with IBD are a bit underweight. So that's why we recommend a lot of smoothies. But if you follow us, you'll see that when we have a lot of smoothies is when we're very active. So after exercise, for example, we will refuel with a smoothie, for example. But also we eat a lot of whole fruits as well. So it's finding a good balance. But I don't think people who demonize smoothies, I don't agree with them. I think if you understand what you're doing, then a smoothie is no different to a soup, for example. Like they'll say, oh, blending the fruit is harmful to your body and things like that. Well, yeah, if you drink it too fast. But but then they'll go and blend like potatoes and pumpkins and carrots into a soup, and they'll drink that. And the only reason it's the same thing, right? You're still breaking up the fibers in the same way. And the only reason you don't have any problems with that is because it's hot and you can't drink it as fast as you could with a smoothie. So it's about managing that and doing it slowly and taking your time with it.
That's a great point. I never thought about the soup with potatoes and carrots mixed with. Yeah, and it's even more. I guess the glycemic index is higher, especially if it's white potato.
Mm-hmm.
Always.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Next,
and,
so hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, I just wanted to add. Also, another cause of elevated triglycerides is the consumption of high a fatty meal. Like you don't track your fat ingestion as well. Some people abuse cashews or peanuts or almonds, and those are highly saturated, coconut even. So those are highly saturated plant-based fats, but are not necessarily the best in the raw vegan lifestyle. We opt for fatty or fat that is healthy and is omega-3 rich. And I always mention the 3 main ones: chia seeds, flax seeds, and hemp seeds. And then the rest, like just a little bit. Don't abuse the fats.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Good answer. Are there any other questions?
Amamud says, is mixing flax oil with smoothies suggested? No.
Nope.
Or would you have it before or after? He's transitioning into a vegan diet a week ago, so that's why he's kind of like a newbie.
Yeah.
You want to answer that?
The first thing I'll say to that is try not to have oil. That's the first thing. With the seeds, flax seeds are very healthy and good, but you can't have them with fruit because it'll impair the digestion of the sugars. But I think maybe you can add to that because you do it quite regularly with your salads and after dinner, or with your dinners and things like that. So.
Yeah. Actually, whoever is transitioning not to raw but just vegan, the main food that you should avoid is oil. Like oil is not food. That's why so many vegans that are like conventional cooked vegans have so many cholesterol, triglycerides problems, just because they eat lots of cooked food. Everything has cooked food. Cooked fat in it, and that's like super atherogenic and also pro-inflammatory. So avoid oil as much as you can. Yeah. Another question, Dr. Enasaltani. What about the medication? You think we should stop taking our medication since it's toxic to our body, meaning stop taking the medication if we want to follow Dr. David Klein's diet?
Good question. There's no black and white answer to that. Okay. I don't think you should stop your medication immediately when you change your diet. So if you're thinking of changing your diet and you read Dr. Klein's book and he tells you what the medication is, and you suddenly start to think, okay, well, medication is toxic, which it is. There's no kind of moving around that. The medication does introduce toxins to your body. But if you're going to make a change to a plant-based diet and come off your medication at the same time, you can again have that extreme detoxification experience, which is what you don't want. Especially if you have gut permeability. So if you've already got leaky gut and you stop your medication as controlling the inflammation in your gut, and you change your diet and things are going through the gut lining, you're going to start to get a lot of inflammation and you're going to start getting lots of diarrhea and bleeding and bowel motions and things like that. So first thing to do is think about changing your diet while you're on your medications and get used to the plant fibers, get your gut microbiome operating well, try and heal as much of the leaky gut as you can. And then once you're stable and your blood tests are good and reasonably good and inflammation's reasonably low and symptoms are well under control, then you should be ideally in consultation with your doctor working out a plan to come off those medications. Now, I know not all doctors are supportive in that. But we have had clients who have actually asked their doctor and the doctor has supported them. So unless you ask them, you don't actually know whether they will or they won't support you. So yes, we've helped people do it with the doctor. We've helped people do it without their doctor, but we don't advise on medication. So it's basically discussing with the client what they're comfortable with doing, and then they make their decision around what they're going to do with their medications. But most people have pretty good results if they take their time and do it in a, I guess, careful and considerate manner. So I guess short answer, don't stop your medication straight away and start to shift to the plant-based diet. And then as your results improve and your blood tests improve, you can think about coming off them later on.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. Like, so many people who come to realize that Western medicine sometimes is not the best answer. They teach everything without realizing that there are some medications that are very important. For example, prednisone. Like, whoever is not vegan and is on a flare, they can save their life. Like, really, prednisone and all these medications that are immunosuppressive, immunoregulators. So at the end of the day, it's just a matter of achieving that confidence that you are following a proper high raw or raw vegan diet, your body is assimilating it and tolerating it, and eventually, just consult with your doctor, not because the doctor will give you permission or not. It's because it has to be like a teamwork, I feel like.
Yeah. And I always tell our clients that if we can all work together, so the doctor, us, and them work as a team to find the solution with them, that is the best situation. Because when you go offside of the doctor, then now you're struggling to get your blood tests, and we find it harder to monitor your progress, and we don't know what the inflammation numbers are and everything like that. So ideally, you do it as a team, and we would love to work with the doctors. We're not against medication, we're not against doctors, but it's also we don't subscribe to the you need to be on medication for life kind of worldview, so it's about finding a good balance between using the medication for its purpose when it's needed, and also not using it when you feel confident enough not to do so.
Right. Yeah, great answer. Well, I guess, there is one more question. Can I blend raw vegetables having ulcerative colitis?
No, don't do that. Yeah, the fibers are too rough. You want to stick to softer fruits and soluble fibers. So yeah, avoid raw vegetables and raw leafy vegetables when you've got IBD. Make sure you cook them and make sure they're soft if you want to have cooked vegetables. Yeah, that's I guess the simple answer there. I mean, you can go into a lot of stuff, but probably I don't know the specifics behind the rest of that question. So the short answer is don't do raw when you've got inflammation in the bowel. Raw vegetables, anyway. Raw fruits soft fruits are great, but none of papayas, dates, sometimes mangoes can be quite okay.
But they have to be super ripe, right? Like,
mangoes need to be very ripe. Don't no, there can't be any acid in them. They need to be really ripe. But if you see David Klein told me he took mangoes out of the healing diet. So maybe when you're transitioning, you can do ripe mangoes, but during the healing phase, we take mangoes out of the diet as well.
Right.
So
and so many people feel like they're missing out if they don't incorporate everything in the blender. No, actually, it's good that you give your body some rest. You're providing your body with calories, but in a very simplified way. Think about it as, if you're in a flare or something, think about it as hospital food. Like, most of the hospital food is like Jello or
baby food. Baby food, yeah.
So mashed bananas are baby food, but this is actually nourishing, less aggressive, and it's gonna propitiate healing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's answered that question. So I guess to end off, I think you maybe had some questions around David Klein's protocol.
Yeah. So
go for it. Shoot.
I haven't read his books, but I know that he was, rest in peace, very knowledgeable about healing ulcerative colitis, helping people with Crohn's disease, UC, etc., inflammatory bowel disease, or irritable bowel syndrome. I know that there is a spectrum. So my question from Dr. David Klein is, I don't know, do you think that somebody that only reads his book can help themselves, or they need like a mentor?
They definitely can help themselves. I mean, Shamiz did it. He did consult with David Klein, but not very often. I think he had 2 or 3 meetings with him, but the rest of it he did on his own. It is much harder. Let's just put it that way, because you don't. The main difference is that you don't know what is, I guess, normal and what's not during the healing time. So, and you don't know what level of symptoms you can handle or might be safe before you need to think, okay, do I need to get some additional help medically, or do I need to make a shift in my diet? Because sometimes if the symptoms are increasing, there's things you can do with your diet that if you've got a coach, they can talk you through that by understanding your symptoms, right? But if you're doing it by yourself, there's no kind of understanding because you haven't seen anybody else go through that. So you don't know, is this normal during healing? Is this level of symptoms okay? Can I continue at this level based on my blood tests? All that kind of stuff can be much harder. So you definitely can. I'm not going to sit here and tell you can't do it if you just follow David Klein's protocol. But I think if you're a more advanced case, or you've had it for a longer period of time, or especially if you've taken immunosuppressive medication at any stage, it's probably better to get guidance. But if you're just starting off, like you've just been diagnosed, you got more chance of success by just following his protocol than if you've had it for more than 2 or 3 years and you've been on azathioprine or anything more stronger than that. It'll be much more tricky to kind of withdraw from that medication and come off it and heal and understand not only the food aspect but the other parts, because healing the gut's not just about what you eat. You have to look at all aspects of your lifestyle. And so someone like me or Shamiz, we can look over your entire lifestyle and say, let's touch on every little thing and talk through everything that you're doing and make sure it's all optimized to make sure you get a good result out of it. Whereas if you're doing it by yourself, you don't really have that understanding, unfortunately.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. But David Klein, unfortunately he's not with us anymore, but he's an absolute legend and the real pioneer. And I think he's probably the father of teaching us that we can heal IBD. And he's the first one to kind of like write down the protocol some 30 years ago about how to heal it. And I know they have followed his protocol at times at True North Health Center and things like that. So it's unfortunate he's not with us anymore, but his work will always live on. So he's a true legend from that perspective.
Oh yeah. I definitely want to read more about the history of raw foods and all these pioneers. And because people come to social media, they find us, but we are just even though as a doctor, I'm learning from the other side of healing. I mean, I know the science, I know biology, anatomy, I understand how the body works, but I'm incorporating my plant-based nutrition education into this, trying to educate more people. But certain approaches that were followed by these pioneers are unknown to me. So I'm really interested, in understanding what was their approach. And also, I also want to emphasize that we need to have the humility to understand that whenever something better rises, I guess to have the openness to say, you know what, we were doing this wrong, and this turned out to be better. Before the microbiome was not understood as well, and now we know it plays an important role. So I just want to emphasize that. And obviously the humility has to come from the medical system more than anybody else, because obviously, there is not a lot of openness in that regard. Like, diet is pivotal, is vital in the healing process, rather than just, following guidelines and all these cytotoxic drugs.
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, I'm looking forward to the point where people who studied health science or natural hygiene and people who study medical science can bring both approaches together, and we can work together a really positive and productive solution for people so that they can gain health and then remain healthy. I mean, I know that's not in the best interest financially for a lot of these organizations, but from a health perspective and from a population perspective, what we're doing right now, it doesn't work. Exactly. It doesn't work, and so it needs to change. And I think there is a grassroots approach, understanding that it needs to change. And unfortunately, I don't think top-down approaches always work very effectively because there's a lot of, I guess, want to keep the status quo because that's what they know. But so it's going to be like a little bit of a grassroots movement that will reach the top, and when there's enough people asking for it, that's when things change from I guess the authorities. So
yeah. Well, let's just keep talking about it, and nobody's attacking anyone. We are just pointing out like a different path and something that is not explored or intentionally or unintentionally, whatever it is. I think we need to just keep raising awareness.
Yeah, absolutely, and letting people know that there isn't just one approach that's going to solve everyone's problems. Everybody has a different lifestyle. We have different backgrounds and histories. We have the same type of body, and we're all designed for the same type of diet, but how we got to the point where we are in our lives is all different. So thinking that a one solution approach is going to be effective for every single person on this planet, I think it's naive. And we need to actually work together as all the health professionals to actually find a proper solution that's going to benefit everyone, and not just I guess the few, or one aspect of what health is. Okay. Anything else? Any other questions? I don't know. I don't think we got any other questions asked, did we?
I don't think we have.
All right. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I think it was a lovely chat. Yeah.
It was great.
Before we go, Dr. Areli's podcast is on our is live now on our podcast. So IBD Heal is the podcast by High Carb Health, and you can find it on whatever podcast that you like. So whether that's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. If you type in IBD Heal and you type in Dr. Areli or Raw Vegan Doctor, you'll find the podcast there. If you want to see the video on YouTube, that's going live in 5 minutes. So you can jump on our High Carb Health YouTube channel and check out the video that we did and go through Dr. Areli's journey to raw veganism and how she's now thriving and doing such a good job helping and educating people about how to change their diet and lifestyle. So so go and check that out on our YouTube channel.
And I just want to remind everyone that they have a podcast. And also I was listening before doing this interview or this live. You have an interview with Dr. Klein, or at least some excerpts, right, in one of your podcasts. So if they can.
The first podcast, when we started the podcast, we thought, what better way to start the podcast than with an interview I did with David Klein in 2013. Right. So I did an interview a long time ago with him when I first started the YouTube channel. And so I've kind of mixed it and put it all together, and it's on the podcast now. So if you want to start with that one, you can start with the first one with Dr. David Klein, talking about his whole journey. He takes you through a history around how we got to this point with medical science and everything like that, and how the health science approach was kind of pushed to one side and treated as quackery and all that kind of stuff. So very interesting how he explains all of that, and he talks about protein and exercise and a few other things. So really insightful. Good to hear his voice as well.
It's a great talk. I really enjoyed it. All right, Shukul. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for your questions and for hanging in there and for your attention. We appreciate that.
Thank you everyone for joining us.